Hey, Sports Fix fans, I'm Fred McLeod, TV voice for the Cavaliers. When I'm not busy taking elbows from my buddy Austin Carr, I'm tuning in to see what the guys are saying. Come on, Cavs!
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
Welcome back to the Sports Mix Live. Yeah, we do it Gangnam style. We do it all kinds of style, baby. On the line, our special guest, Brown's great. Without this man, there is no dog pound. Hanford Dixon.
Hey, big dog, y'all got it going on over there. I was sitting there watching y'all. Y'all got a good show, man. I've listened to your show a lot, man. I got to compliment you guys. You got a really good show going there.
It's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Yes, indeed. Welcome in, everybody. We are back on the air live. The Sports Fix coming at you. Welcome across the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rocc here. Dan Wismar, my man from Everybody Hates Cleveland. Dan's going to be with us just about 25 minutes from now or so. Looking forward to that. We're going to open up the phone lines. Matter of fact, we're going to get the phones open early on here in the first segment of the show, guys, and we'll get rolling with that. So much to get into. NBA free agency. Not only is that off and popping just like the Sports Fix, but, brother, has the face of the league shifted around or what? Not only that, but the mad money is out, baby. I mean, mad money, brother. We're going to get into it in just a moment. Not only did a couple of Cavs, last week we were talking, as a matter of fact, we were just on the air here a few days ago when Timofey Mozgov signed his deal and he got the $72 million. How about Delhi? 4 years, $39 million heading off to the Bucks. Luol Deng, 72. Remember Luol Deng, former Cavalier? $72 million to go play alongside Mozgov up there in La La Land. How about Mike Conley? And hey, I love Mike Conley's game, but brother has never even made an all-star game, and he became, based on average value, the highest paid player in NBA history with his $153 million deal. There's so much, though. Obviously, the big fish, Kevin Durant, up and leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder and heading across the bay to the Golden State Warriors. We're going to definitely talk about that and get your thoughts here in just a minute. I know everybody in Cleveland and all across the social media is going crazy. Dwayne Wade to Cleveland. I've got my thoughts on why that is practically impossible. But hey, who knows, man? We're gonna get into all of that here. I know Dan is gonna have a lot to say. We're gonna talk about the craziness going on around the National Basketball Association. Literally, the face of the league everywhere has changed. So much player movement. Unprecedented, I would think. The number of teams that have reshuffled the deck. Talk about reshuffled the deck. How about them New York Knicks? It was like Phil said, you know what? Give me that Porzingis guy. Give me Melo. And I'm just going to get a whole new team and put it around them. We got Derrick Rose heading in there. They signed Brandon Jennings, Noah, a bunch of deals there. We'll get into all of that here as free agency rolling, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Cavaliers, what they may or may not do, what they even can do here? And do you respond to other teams' moves in the month of July when you are the reigning NBA champions? That's going to be something to dive into. Indians, talk about diving in. They have dove into this latest homestand red hot. Even though the big winning streak came to an end over the weekend, the home winning streak continues. The dominance over the Tigers continues. And I'll tell you what, the crowds have picked up. They had that sellout, and that 4th of July sellout pushed them out of the bottom of the league in attendance. They've got a lot of room to grow. But looking at what's coming up with this homestand, they're going to start growing pretty quickly here. Standing room only tickets on sale. How long has it been since a homestand has not only had a sellout, the traditional 4th of July, the big crowd, the once or twice a year, but also multiple standing room type situations? I mean, this thing is starting to heat up, and the Indians are legit as they are heading into the All-Star break with the best record or near the best record, in the American League, closing in there. The Indians lead, their pitching leads the American League in just about every single category. Danny Salazar and Francisco Lindor to head to the All-Star game. Guys, we're going to talk about that red-hot Indian tribe. We're going to talk Cavs, NBA, so much more. Dan Wismar is going to join us. Phone's about to be open. Matter of fact, calls already coming in. Let's rock and roll. You ready to ride? Welcome in, my friends, to the Sports Fix. I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers. Call me anything you'd like. Just call me here each and every day. Excited to crack the mic and bring it across the Sports Fix radio network. We're doing the thing. Whether you're listening live on TuneIn, TuneIn's radio app worldwide, on Spreaker, on Mixler, their respective digital and mobile apps. Perhaps you're enjoying the show on our home base, thesportsfix.net, your one-stop shop, as we say, for all things Cleveland sports. Sports Fix, it's got the live feed of the broadcast. It's got all of our sponsors and all of their great banners. Make sure you check them out, by the way. They help make this happen free for you each and every time we do it. It's got our social media widgets, everything you need to interact with the Sports Fix right there. Bookmark it, Daddy, thesportsfix.net as well. Shout out to everybody listening on 96.7 WFSN in Union City, Pennsylvania on the FM radio dial. Shout out to my friends up there in Union City and surrounding areas near Erie, Pennsylvania. Shout out to everybody, the thousands listening around the world on digital delay on sites 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, CarPlay, all the places that you guys do the thing. Download, feed, subscribe, get your fix. I say it all the time. Thank you so much, because without you, I'm just me, Daddy, sitting here talking into an empty mic. With you guys, we are the Sports Fix, and of course, phone lines are open. I'm going to get to them here momentarily. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. 216-539-7535. Want to talk Cavs, Tribe, whatever you want. Pick up the phone, give us a call. Many of you listening to the show on your phone, you're saying, J-Rocc, Daddy, I can't get to you. I'm streaming on my device. Use the social media, Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixcle, or you can email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixcle, all one word. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com, and make sure you like and follow the pages as you do. Join the over 25,000 unique social media followers of the Sports Fix. Guys, we're going to rock and roll, as I said, just about 20 minutes from now. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland is going to join us. You know, a couple of things that I want to get into before I jump onto the phones with you guys. 216-539-7535. Going back to the basketball. And by the way, before I even get into the sports, welcome back in post-holiday. We were just with you at the kickoff of the big holiday weekend. Hopefully everybody out there had a safe and happy and enjoyable 4th of July Independence Day holiday, and getting back into the swing of things now. We're going to push through this hump day together, baby, and getting back into the NBA conversation. And I'll start with, Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors right off the bat. everybody has the same knee-jerk reaction to it. I mean, I joke with my friends. We play a little bit of NBA 2K. It's now illegal to use the Golden State Warriors on the video game because as far as that goes, there won't be any touching it. But video games and real life, on paper and on the court, are two different things. And I was talking to a bunch of all different people in different conversations at different get-togethers over the last couple of days, especially since Kevin Durant made that big announcement to walk away. And of course, the first thing when people talk about him walking away from Oklahoma City and heading across the way over there to play with the squad that knocked him out of the playoffs after they had a 3-1 lead, they being the Oklahoma City Thunder. Of course, the first thing a lot of people want to do is go right to the LeBron James conversation and the comparison of when LeBron left Cleveland. And I'll tell you what, I know there was a much more personal attachment to it when it came to the situation in Cleveland. I mean, I've talked about it before, simply the way it went down, not so much because I'm a big believer in the free market and all of that stuff. Free agency, yes, absolutely. So the basketball side of it is a bit different as far as talking about past transgressions in 2010. From the actual basketball side of it, I actually think it's a much different situation when you look at Kevin Durant. And I know a lot of people will say, hey, brother wants to win and you can't hold him down for that. And that's fine. I'm with you. But a lot of people have made the comparisons. Look at when LeBron left the Cavaliers, they were in a bad situation as far as maneuverability, draft picks in the future, the assets that they had to rebuild the roster around LeBron James. And they had only made the NBA Finals in that one run when they got knocked out in 4 games by the Spurs, and then kind of while they were progressing as far as becoming a successful regular season team, as we've seen, the NBA is built so that the best teams have super successful regular seasons. I mean, those Cavs teams were 60-plus win Cavaliers teams. This team that won a championship didn't win as many games as those Cavaliers teams, but clearly I think you would take this team over those teams. And it was their ability to get better that was very limited. So when you're looking at it from a basketball sense, there were at least other situations. When you look at Oklahoma City, I disagree that it's similar. That's a squad that made in the last 5 years, 6 years, they made the NBA championships. The NBA Finals once. They made the Western Conference Finals, obviously the year they made it, plus 3 other times. So that's a pretty tight run. Now, obviously, you can say he was getting frustrated with not breaking through, but you're right there, and you've got a squad around you. I was kind of intrigued by seeing Oladipo added to the mix there with Westbrook and Durant. Clearly, there were some problems with Westbrook and Durant. I mean, that was the big thing there because you had the two guys. They were always talking. You hear from one camp how close they are, from another how they had so many issues. I've got to think that the issues side won, and they were correct because he chose to leave. But, a lot of criticism on him now for leaving that team that was his team. He was, what were they calling him over the weekend? A founding father of the Oklahoma City franchise. And for him to leave that and then the look. I mean, obviously, optics is a word that Dan Wismar and I use a lot. But for the look of heading over to the team that beat you, to the team that you couldn't get past. I mean, that wasn't what LeBron did. What LeBron did was a different type of collusion. Him and his buddies had a plan that they wanted to do, and they executed it. It was something that was talked about in advance, and when they had their opportunities to do it, they purposely timed their contracts. That was friends that decided they wanted to get together and rig the game. You may say no difference than this, but it's got the added aspect of leaving for the team that knocked you out and that you couldn't get past the hump with. So now Kevin Durant goes over to the Golden State Warriors, and you add him to the mix. And of course, one of the things that I found interesting is they had to, same thing when you talk about these teams with the salary cap room, they had to make several moves to make it happen, which obviously you do. When you have the chance to add a franchise type player like a Kevin Durant, you make the moves. But it cost them. I think they had to renounce Ezeli. Bogut left, obviously. Barnes got the max contract offer, and he headed out as well. So they replaced it, though. Hey, David West headed over there, and now some talk that Ray Allen may want to, Jesus Shuttlesworth may want to come out of retirement and play with them. Maybe he wants to play with the Cavs, they say. But you look at that, they're calling it a core four now. Like, everything expands as time goes on. First you had a pair of superstars together, and then a big three became in vogue. And now you got the core four. That's what they're calling it here with Green, Curry, Thompson, and now Kevin Durant. And, I was telling some people, there's ways that this thing could work and ways that it could blow up. Obviously, if everybody's not all in to steal a phrase from the Cavaliers, as far as making this thing work, then it's not. It's going to blow up. Remember the Lakers. Now, the difference is the ages. I think you had much older guys when the Lakers tried to put the group of all-stars together. Remember, they got Malone and the Glove, and then they had Kobe there. They were trying to put that group together, and it blew up and didn't happen. So there's definitely obvious examples across the place. You talk about when Michael Vick called the Eagles a dream team a couple years ago, and they had that awful season. That's definitely in the cards for happening. But then again, perhaps not. I'm very curious to see. I mean, obviously, if Kevin Durant comes in with the right mindset, and they figure out, if they all come in all in and figure out where they've got to sacrifice and work together, they're going to be difficult. Not just, everybody's talking about offensively. Can this team average 120 plus points a game for the season? I actually think it's kind of interesting to think defensively what that squad could do. They picked up Pachulia, too, as well the other day to try to fill some gaps on the bench, and they've still got Iguodala, who's going to move into the starting lineup. So let's say you got that. I mean, add Iguodala to the four that we just mentioned. That's a pretty imposing defensive group as well. But the bench depth has been altered, and then you switch that focus over. Immediately, the talk was, how do the Cavs answer? What are they going to do now? Because now, clearly, the Golden State Warriors are the favorites. Let's see what first off, we see what regular season success is worth in the NBA. Currency isn't all that good, as the Warriors just came off a record-setting season and then were not able to win in the finals. But looking at that, let's see how that squad grows together. Do you answer? Do you have to feel the need to do that if you're the defending champs? The Cavs already have to worry about moves to make. Look at this crazy money that's going around. You've got to think, if Delhi got close to $40 million over 4 years and $9 million a year plus whatever the average was, you look at some of these deals, you got to think J.R. Smith now is knowing wouldn't you think he's going to cash in $15, $17, $18 million a year? Now, the Cavs can go over the salary cap to sign their own players, and they're going to have to move some things around. But, I mean, J.R. Smith is now going to be even more costly. These guys are making mad money. And you look at the Cavs as structured, the most they can offer Dwayne Wade, because they're already over the cap, is the mid-level exemption, which is 3.4 something like that $million, unless one of two things was to happen. And I mean, realize that as we speak, Dwayne Wade, and by the time you listen to this on delay, perhaps this could be worked out, but as we speak, Dwayne Wade's got $50 million guaranteed, 2 years on the table from the Denver Nuggets. The Chicago Bulls are believed to be able to match that same offer. Miami's got $40+ million on the table and a face-to-face meeting with Dwayne Wade as well. The Cavaliers have $3.4 million to offer, unless either Dwayne Wade was willing to come in here for $3.4 million and leave $46.5 million on the table, which would be unprecedented sacrifice, and I can't see that happening. Number one, I can't see the union allowing a player to leave that kind of money on the table, because that just screws up things. There's a lot of players whose salaries are tied in to other players' salaries and values. I can't see that. I just can't see that. The other would be for LeBron James to agree to take the minimum salary to accommodate Dwayne Wade's salary accommodations. Can't see that happening either for a guy who just talked about finally being able to be the highest paid player on his team and make the maximum salary. The third option, which is absolutely what you don't do, is if neither one of those happen, you have to gut the bottom half of the roster, and you may have to trade out Kevin Love. You've got to make all kinds of moves to accommodate that kind of salary. I don't want to do that at all. So unless we're getting ready to see a sacrifice of unheard of proportions, which, hey, if so, it benefits Cleveland, and I'm all about that. But unless we're about to see that, there's no way this thing can happen. I'm very interested to see how it plays out because, like I said, that could be pretty historic. Guys, I haven't even started talking about the Tribe yet. I'm going to do that with Dan Wismar in a minute, but I've got about 5 or 6 minutes here. I'm going to go to the phones and get at least one live call in. Caller, you've been hanging on for a minute. You're up next on the Sports Fix. How you doing? Who is this?
Big Daddy. This is Big Bob from Bristol, Connecticut, baby.
What's up, Big Bob? How you doing all the way up there?
Haven't been on this show in a while.
Absolutely, man. We hear from you on the hotline. Good to hear from you live.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Lindor just hit one out to left center there, and they misplayed it, so he's on second. I'm loving it.
Watching a little Tribe. How about those red-hot Indians, my friend?
How about them, man? You can't even feel how I feel about that Young Indians ball club, team ball club. Awesome nucleus of fabulous young players that have been together for a while now. So sky's the limit for our young ball club, that's for sure.
I'll tell you what, talking about that nucleus, 2 of them making the All-Star game, Francisco Lindor and Danny Salazar. And I'll tell you what, Lindor, I believe, becomes, he's the youngest to make the All-Star game from the Indians since, Buddy Bell, I believe? I
think it's Buddy Bell, yes.
Yeah, an amazing number right there as 22 years old and just getting better. I've been talking to people about him nonstop. He is legit. And Danny Salazar as well leads the American League in most categories. I think he has earned the right to start the All-Star game, but it's good to see 2 of those young Indians front and center here in the All-Star, which is pretty much the All-Star game of Chicago's Cubs and Boston's Red Sox with a couple of Indians and a few other players thrown in there.
Absolutely, and I love to see those stirrups and sannies on those young ball players. I love it.
All right, Big Bob, how about the Cavs? How about the NBA? Anything there before we head out?
The NBA, how about my New York Knicks, baby?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I was going to ask you about them.
How about my Knicks?
You're a big Knicks guy, and we've talked about
Absolutely.
the struggles, but what about Phil Jackson and the Frankenstein he's trying to put together here? I think the Knicks are a sleeper team right now. That's a lot of pieces to put together. Just like we were talking about the Warriors, can they fit together?
Absolutely. On paper, everything always looks good, Big Daddy.
Yeah.
It's getting them out there together and performing as a team. That is the big, big difference. And, of course, you've got the X factor, injuries.
Oh, of course. You guys got Derrick Rose. That's the big X factor now. Of all the moves the Knicks made, real quick before I let you go, what was your favorite one?
Probably Rose, even though he's got 2 bad wheels.
You like it? Hey, I'll tell you what. If he stays healthy, he's a great player.
That's the question.
You know what I think is a big one? I think Brandon Jennings was, when I heard that he signed, I said, wow, now that's a nice piece. I think that that may be a good pickup there. I think they may be able to put something interesting together for sure.
I hope so. But, hey, I love to see this crowd still coming into the ballpark. This is fabulous.
For sure, Big Bob. Wait till you see this weekend when they fill it up again for the Yankees. My friend, anything else?
No, that is it, J-Rocc. Let me let you get on to other fans. And, you guys are fabulous. Keep it up. And I love seeing your stuff on there, you little wrestler, you.
You got it, man. Take it easy, my friend.
All right, brother. You be safe, and let's go Young Indians.
That's right. Let's go Young Indians. My man, Big Bob. Take care. My man, all the way up in Bristol, Connecticut. Guys, you can keep calling the hotline, 216-539-7535. We'll play anything on the back end of the show. We're going to go ahead and take a break when we get We're going to take a break and get you the news. And when we get back, we're going to have my man Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland, and we're going to talk about them red-hot young Cleveland Indians, as my man Big Bob was just talking about, as they continue to roll on here, dominating Detroit at home, continuing the home winning streak and continuing their winning ways in the first half of the season. We're going to talk about all of that, Cavs, the NBA, all this and so much more with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland, and it's coming up next after the news, Daddy, here on the Sports Fix.
Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping.
The Sports Fix.
A shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
The Sports Fix.
A young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
The fix is in. The Sports Fix will be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
This is Josh Tomlin of the Cleveland Indians, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now, it's time!
Fight fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You's as good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com. SportsFix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The SportsFix.
Let's talk about the X's and O's of family entertainment. Every parent in Ohio knows the importance of being able to draw up an activity that'll get you out of the house for a couple of hours. But it needs to be affordable. It needs to be family-friendly. Above all, it needs to be fun. Now, let's talk about high school sports. Bang for your buck, school sports provide the perfect game plan for your family. You'll enjoy all of the drama and excitement competitive sports offer. You'll be supporting the future leaders of our community in a meaningful way. Best of all, you can take the entire family without breaking the bank. Heck, you won't even dent it. Now, enough chalk talk. Let's get out there and see what's playing at the high school in your community. School sports. Good for our kids, good for our community. This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit FantasyJocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
Well, Olympic hero Oscar Pistorius has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for the murder of his girlfriend, Reber Steenkamp. The minimum sentence in South Africa for murder is 15 years. However, the judge said there were compelling circumstances which brought about the lesser sentence. The judge also called Pistorius a fallen hero. Argentina and Barcelona soccer star Lionel Messi and his father were both found guilty of 3 counts of tax fraud by a Spanish court and were each sentenced to 21 months in prison today. But under Spanish law, Messi and his father will not serve any prison time, as sentences less than 2 years in Spain for first offenders are suspended. Now, the sentences can be appealed through Spain's Supreme Court. Messi and his father have denied they have used tax havens in Belize and Uruguay to avoid paying taxes from 2007 to 2009. Well, the Denver Nuggets have offered Dwayne Wade $50 million over 2 years to leave the Heat and come play for Denver, according to ESPN's Mark Stein. Brian Windhorst reports that the Heat are offering $40 million at this point. The Bulls are also talking to Wade. Now, sources tell ESPN's Chris Broussard that Ray Allen is considering making a comeback. The sources say that Allen's representatives reached out to the Golden State Warriors recently about the possibility of Allen joining the Warriors. At this point, Golden State is unsure about pursuing Allen. The All-Star Game next Tuesday night in San Diego here on ESPN Radio will have a definite Chicago-Boston flavor to it. The teams were announced last night. The Cubs will send 7 and start 5. The Red Sox will send 6 and start 4 players.
Thank you for calling the Sports Fix. May I ask who's calling?
Dark Helmet! I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
So what does that make you to the show?
Absolutely nothing!
Call the Sports Fix, even if you have nothing to say at all.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rocc with you here. Dan Wismar is going to join me momentarily here, waiting for him to call in on the hotline. Meanwhile, you guys can keep the conversation going throughout the show, throughout the week, until we join you again 24/7 on Facebook, on Twitter, through the email. Hit us up, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixCLE, email thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, Facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixCLE. You can email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. And as we wait for Dan to join us, I was talking to you guys before the break, and then we heard the offer from the Nuggets and the Bulls and the Heat in there. Very interesting to see how this Dwayne Wade scenario plays out. Charles Barkley, my man, he was mad and went off on LeBron when he left and did the same thing on Kevin Durant about he wished he could go back and cheat the league is what he was calling it, and rig his way to a championship. He said he couldn't have imagined picking up the phone and calling guys like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. He said, I'd love to do it now and say, let's just dominate the NBA. You know what, though? I'll tell you what, that's just a funny thing to think about. Imagine if they had. Imagine if they did. Because that's the similarity. I mean, but... put it in terms of those players. Imagine what kind of super team. Imagine a core 4 that Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson would be back in the 80s. I bet you Barkley would have had a ring, that's for sure. Would have been interesting, but you would have never saw that, and that's what a lot of people say. But at the same time, it was a different world, and people look at things differently now. It'll be very interesting to see. Again, paper is paper. It'll be very interesting to see in person how things play out. As we wait for Dan, phone lines, I'll open them up for a minute. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535, the number to call. As we're talking about this. A couple of other things, too. Looking at the Indians as they're playing ball live, if you're with us now, and the Indians have jumped out to a 1-0 lead in the second inning over the Tigers, looking to continue that dominance, make it 11 in a row, and we'll talk about that more in a moment as Dan's going to join in on the conversation as soon as I get him in. Dan, my man, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, J-Rocc. Good to hear from you.
Good to have you here, as always. And as I said, guys, see, now the phone lines, I wasn't sure if you were joining me on time or not, so I said, okay, I'll pop open the phones, and as soon as I do, you called in, and now the calls come in. Guys, I'll open it back up on the back end of this after Dan, but welcome back into the show. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland, talking a little bit of the Indians here, just jumped out to a lead here in this afternoon matinee game against the Tigers, looking to extend that streak. Streaks aplenty when it comes to the Indians these days.
Boy, I tell you, Jared, I was at the game last night, and I tell you, it never gets old beating up on the Tigers.
No, never.
That was big fun last night at the park. Just
so you saw Lindor's couple of web gems in person last night.
Oh my God, my seats are right on top of third base,
brother,
and so we got a great look at that, and he just dazzled people last night. On the play that he where he dove and kind of broke up the rally there, I thought he was going to go to second base. I mean, he had a force at second. I don't think he ever looked at second base. Just got up and made the one bounce throw to first. And,
unreal. And then to swing the double play over to third too. I mean,
that was spectacular. That was just that's a baseball IQ play.
Yeah.
When you're thinking. You're just thinking, you're so into the game that it was second nature to him, it seemed like, because obviously both runners had to hold up to make sure the ball hit the ground, and Kipnis played it on a short hop, and they really had him. I don't know if they could have doubled him at first base, but Lindor didn't even think about going to first.
Nope.
He went right over to third, and that was just a smart ball player play, and they announced during the game that he was selected for the All-Star team, and so he was getting the crowd all into it. Every time he came up, they were giving him a big cheer, and he was knocking the ball around a little bit too. Him and Lonnie. So what got into Lonnie?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. It's contagious. Guys are like, hey, I want a piece of this too, because it just seems like the timely hitting too. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and by the way, speaking of timely and times, and I was telling some guys this. Sitting on my porch Monday, you got the rain delay. I opened up the curtains so I got the view of the TV, and I was sitting outside. There's fireworks going on. It's 12:15, 12:20 in the morning, something like that. And the Indians with the late hit and all of that. It felt like the 90s. It felt like 95 all over again, playing into the little early part of the night there, and everybody's watching it, and I don't know, and there's a lot of people in the stadium, and it had that vibe, man. It felt good.
Yeah, it really did, and the Napoli homer late in
right.
the game made it seem like, made you think about Big Albert,
right.
winning so many games late with bombs in the bottom of the eighth or the bottom of the ninth. It seemed like he did that about once a week back in '95, and that really was reminiscent of it. And what a bomb that was! That's like 3/4 of the way up the bleachers. Talk about a no doubter. Big fun. Yeah, it's and they're doing things that the '95 and '97 teams never did.
Right.
I mean, obviously the '95 team had a huge lead, kind of all the way, not necessarily wire to wire, but we're in uncharted waters here in the last couple decades with a 7.5 game lead coming up to the 4th of July. I mean, that's heady stuff. The whole division was losing yesterday. We were sitting there last night watching the White Sox go down, watching the Royals go down, and obviously the Tigers going down. That's what you need to see, and they've got to be looking up at us, 19 games over 500, thinking how are we gonna hang with these guys when they're only 3 and 4 games over.
Right. I mean, it's amazing. And as you said, we kind of touched on that last time we talked, doing things that even some of those great teams hadn't done before. My man LG just sent us a message and said that the Indians have won more games in the last 3 weeks than the Browns have in this decade, which I think is a bona fide fact. If you do the math, it wouldn't be that hard. You're adding a couple 5s and some 4s together, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to get to it. As the Indians, they run off the 14-game overall streak before it came to an end, and they finished up that trip 8-2, and now with a win today, they would take the home win streak to 14 straight, as they've continued that one with the first couple of wins here against the Tigers.
Yeah, and I understand that's the longest in the majors, at least this year. I'm not sure how far back you got to go to find a 14-game win streak anywhere in the majors. Maybe last season, I'm not sure. But, yeah, it is remarkable how well they're playing at home. And for a while there, a couple seasons, it seemed like the team played better on the road. They'd come home and they'd kind of used to getting disappointed at home, and they'd come home sort of with a lot on the line or a lot of momentum from a good road trip and kind of squander it by not playing that well at home. But they really have turned it on this year. And you're right, it's sort of a perfect storm. We've talked about how, the momentum of the Cavs could feed into this if we could just sort of get it right. Well, it seems like we've gotten it right. I mean, the team got hot at the right time. They picked up some momentum. They've been having nice crowds. At 19 last night, it wasn't a great crowd, but it was loud, and they were into it, and that's part of it too. It's a crowd that's not necessarily sitting on its hands, which obviously helps even if the numbers aren't great.
Absolutely. I said, hey, the rest of the season, if they can stay this hot, it's very reasonable to expect about 20,000 or so in that area during the weeknight games and sellouts on most of the weekend affairs, especially as they continue to heat up through this thing. I think that's very reasonable, and that's a big uptick. And then from there, you can continue to progress. But, I'm with you, man. It's just as you watch them play. And Monday, I wanted to go back to that because everything you just talked about and everything we've talked about for years, I thought Monday was the perfect way to show people this is not business as usual, because there it was. They had gotten hot on the road, and most of the end of that big streak was on the road. So they're coming home, 4th of July, where they always have at least the one non-opening day sellout every year. You get your big 4th of July fireworks crowd, and it's the Tigers, and it's all of this thing, and it's sold out, right? And all of this stuff. Then you got to maybe, a little falter at the end of the trip there. They lose the couple, and you're wondering, okay, this is where they always lose. In years past, this table was set, and then they'd go out there and they'd get bombed 10-1 by the Tigers or something like that after a rain delay, and people sit and wait. And then that happened again, and the Indians didn't just win, but it was the method that they won, the late home run, the excitement that comes with it that said, hey, man, this is not business as usual or the way it's been over the last decade or so, because that was where they would normally lose, like you just said, and they did it in such an exciting way that breeds more coming back, and again, that was so different than the results of the past.
Well, sure, especially after the 17-1 game,
right,
in Toronto, and of course that managed to follow the Cavs really to the letter.
To the letter, by the way, Dan, explain that.
Winning the first two in Toronto and then losing the next two in Toronto.
How did they do that? How did they follow that? That's one of those freaky coincidences. Now imagine, obviously we're playing fantasy, but imagine the Indians really win this thing, man, and they take it all the way through. Imagine a coincidence like that between two championship seasons back to back. I mean, that's like some Twilight Zone stuff.
Something. And I was trying to sober people up. Even before those last two games, I was reminding people on Twitter, after they won the first two in Toronto, I said,
they lost the next two. Yeah.
If it follows the Cavs and you sweep Detroit and then you sweep Atlanta and you win the first two at Toronto, you got to lose the next two at Toronto. And that was
you said that here last week. Yeah. You were joking and you said that
before they went out and lost them. But to your point, in the past they might have come home and an Indians team coming off a hot streak might have dropped 4, 5, 6 in a row.
Yes.
And that was what everybody was sort of geared up for, especially after 17-1. Or, oh my God, the air's coming out of the balloon, and they lit down, and there really was a sense of sort of exhaustion during that 17-1 game. At least the bullpen came in and just threw gas on the fire, and obviously they made some roster moves after that, but. It was great to see him pick it back up, put two more back on the board, get back to that high water mark of 19 games over, where we're sitting today. After a couple of losses, kind of put the streak to an end up there. So yeah, great to see them bounce right back, get two in a row, and like I said, it's the merciless whipping of the Detroit Tigers is just good for my soul.
I'm telling you, brother, the Indians have it's amazing. What is it? 11 in a row now over the Tigers. They're just absolutely dominant. And what was it?
It is amazing, too. And Miggy Cabrera has done squat. I mean, this is a guy that owns the tribe, that has a minority share of the Cleveland Indians. I mean, he has done nothing. I think he's hitting about $2 against us this year, and I don't think he's had more than 1 or 2 extra base hits against us. I think he has 1 homer against us. But,
and you know what?
Yeah,
while we're throwing stuff back to the glory days, this is the best run the Indians have had against the Tigers since you go back to 1996 when they went 12-0 against the Tigers. And by the way, as you said, it's merciless. They're not just whipping them, but the combined score. Now this doesn't take into account today's game, but 77-24 in favor of the Indians.
Yeah, that's remarkable. What a 7-2, 6-2 game average.
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. It's domination, and the pitching again came back. I'm curious to know what you think about the moves with the pitching staff. Were you surprised that Chamberlain went maybe instead of a Hunter or even a McAllister after his showing?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what. I know you saw as well our buddy Jim Pete and his take on it. Them trying to follow the same formula that teams like the Cardinals have done there, man. And I don't know, man. I mean,
I kind of like. I don't know about relying on Moramundo as your lefty reliever. I mean,
yeah.
I think you've got to go get a lefty reliever somewhere.
Well, I would think that's got to be the move. If there's a move that they're looking to make, that would have to be it.
Yeah, and but I tell you, he's not afraid to just run righty after righty out there in that bullpen. I had been liking what I'd seen of Tommy Hunter until he came unglued a little bit in Toronto the other day. I love Dan Otero. I tell you that guy just comes out, throws nothing but strikes, and gets people out. It's all he doesn't have to look great doing it, but man, he's had a phenomenal season. I'd be looking at him to pitch some 8th innings with a lead here going forward. Although my whipping boy Brian Shaw has been looking pretty good the last few times out.
I mean, you look through the organization. That's what they've done is accumulate arm after arm that does what you just said, just plows them down, throws strike after strike, and just keeps coming at them. The Indians have built up a pool of that. And like you said, they're not afraid to run through them, and they will. They've got them. I mean, I'll tell you what.
And lately,
man,
they've been well rested because you're only
right. Well, there you go. When the starters are averaging you seven innings as a starter,
yeah, two innings a game, carved up about 6 or 7 guys. You can keep guys fresh, and that's a great thing too. And we talked last week about how both Shaw and Cody Allen seem to have benefited by it because they just look like they're a little fresher.
And Dan, the starting pitching, it's not bolstered by a strong start to the season and slowly winding down. They're just getting stronger and stronger as they go, man. I mean, again, leading the American League in practically every category, and that starting pitch is Salazar. Let's talk about him for a minute. I said, man, I mean, he's right up there in the argument for starting this thing when we're talking about the All-Star game, but he's a guy leading the American League in most categories. What, ERA, he's leading in hits allowed, runs allowed, strikeout percentage, just an amazing performance.
I saw the other day the 26 runs allowed. I think that's what
26
gave up last week. It's just been it has been amazing. He started out so strong, and he gave up 3 the other day. Sort of sad to see him not be able to pick up that win the other night in his last start. But that would have been nice to go into the All-Star game with 11 wins. But I imagine Chris Sale will be starting the All-Star game. But you're right.
You're right. Absolutely.
Every claim to be in the conversation.
But as they were talking about too, I can't remember. It might have been Underwood. Somebody mentioned it during the broadcast that depending on how Sale's last start or where he falls in the rotation there heading into the break, he may not be able to. And if that's the case, I would think Salazar would be right there.
Yeah, you'd think that he'd. I can't think of who else would be a better choice than him. Going in and see, it's it's the Kansas City manager running things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ned Yost making those calls for him.
So it'll be interesting to see, and it's nice to see those two young Indians, as Big Bob would say, front and center in the All-Star game when it comes down to it. Hey, I know I've only got you for a limited amount of time, shift gears a little bit away from the Indians and talk a little bit about the crazy world that is the NBA as all of these pieces are floating around. First off, talking about crazy, you have to follow that up with the word money, because this is crazier money than ever seen before. What did I see? I saw it was like an interesting graphic. I can't Bleacher Report, one of them, and they stacked up just the first 4 big contracts that were signed on that opening day for the NBA, and I believe they matched the total of the top 20 big stars in the NFL. It was Peyton, it was Brady, it was all of those guys piled up, and it added up to like Mike Conley and 3 other guys. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it is nutty, and not only is it big money, but it's big money going to really some mediocrities, I guess is the best word that I can put on it.
Yes.
Just trying to think of a word to describe it the other day. Middle of the road, marginal, mediocre NBA players. And you could throw our own guys in there, from Mozgov to Dellavedova or whatever, guys that averaged a minute per game or something in the playoffs this past year, and they're getting 4-year, $60-70 million deals. It really is nutty.
And, I wanted to ask you, I saved this part of the conversation for you because I didn't want to just talk about this with myself, but I actually think, I've been joking about the dollar amounts and the silliness of that, but I actually think that this is going to be a bad thing in general for the NBA in a couple of different ways. Number one, I believe that it is going to breed some chemistry issues across the board on many of these teams for the next 2 years, and it's the union's own fault. I mean, I don't want to get too technical, but the union, when they saw this jump in the salary cap coming, the NBA tried to get the union to do a smoothing process and run it over like a 5-year period where it would gradually happen so that they wouldn't get what you have here, which is you're going to have teams all over the league with marginal type players making triple and quadruple what the top players and the actual producers and the star players on these teams are making. And you've got to think, with as selfish as many of these modern athletes are, that that's going to breed discontent all over the league for 2 years, while guys that have won things and done things and all of this are, in their mind, just making peanuts compared to a guy that, to them is nowhere near them. But the other place I think it's going to cause big problems is with the general public, because people they always talk about big money, but at least you can justify LeBron James making $25 million, or this, even if they're with Dwayne Wade and this money they're talking about with him, at least those are proven commodity type players. But when I think back to 99, was it right after 98 when they did the lockout, they had them first couple $100 million contracts. Garnett got one, Larry Johnson was up there, a couple of other guys, and the fans' perception of NBA players changed, and it really they didn't understand those amounts of money. And I think you're about to get there now with marginal players getting these ridiculous. I mean, life change. I mean, when so many things in this world could be changed with extra money here and there, and civic things are being cut here and there, and then you hear about a guy whatever making $100 million to dribble a basketball, and he only does it off the bench for half the game. That starts to be hard to reconcile.
It does, and before you got to the fans part, that's exactly where my thought process was going. In fact, I had a conversation on the way up to the to Progressive Field last night in the car with my wife about the sick money that's being paid to these guys, and how do you justify that to the fan who maybe, I'm not talking about, the classic, not middle class, but maybe working class guy, Joe Lunch Bucket guy, who wants to, go to a Cavs game or take his boy to a Cavs game, and he's now going to have to pay some $200 for, a nosebleed seat, and another couple hundred if he wants to take somebody, and another $100 if he wants to park and get something to eat. It is nuts, and I think there is going to be some pushback because, like you say, it's not just the stars. You can say, and I made the statement that, well, I don't have a problem with players making all this money as long as there's people lined up at the ticket booth plunking down their hard-earned cash to buy tickets and go to the games. And then we got into talking about, well, how about the guy who just can't do that, who simply cannot, afford a couple $100 for a ticket or even $100 and a quarter or whatever the cheap seats are in the NBA these days. I don't go to NBA games for, in large part for that reason. I mean, I'm Indians ticket holder, Brown season ticket holder, but even the Browns is $95 a pop. You can't get near the court for $95 in the NBA.
Oh,
so
goodness,
it's
no.
It's a problem, and I think you're right. I think there is going to be public opinion pushback, as well as certainly some bruised egos among NBA players, which doesn't bother you and me a whole heck of a lot, but it sure can cause conflict in a locker room and on the court chemistry.
Absolutely. And the cost of being a bad team just went up too. You look at some of these absolutely awful teams. Now the salary cap has jumped up over $25 million. It's up to $94 million this year. And now for the first time they got that, I believe it's 85% is the floor that you have to spend. So all of these teams, that's why, for people that don't understand why all of these players are getting such big raises, it's because for the first time, teams have a minimum that they have to spend, and it's 85% of $94 million. So what would that be? Probably somewhere around $80 million, somewhere in that area, 75, 80 million. And last year, the salary cap was 70 million, and most teams were spending 40, 50 in that area. So these teams have to spend an extra $30 million whether they sign a new player or not. They have no choice but to spend an extra $30 million. So that's why all of these players got such big raises, because these teams all had to spend 85% of the available salary cap, and most of them were 20, 30, 40 million under that number.
Yeah, you're right. I heard the 84 something is the number that I heard that is the new salary floor. And the other thing that it will trickle down to other sports. I saw one national writer, and I can't remember if it was an NBA national guy, like an Aldridge type guy, or somebody that was an NFL guy, but making the point that, how long is the NFL players union going to sit still for the no guaranteed money, no guaranteed contracts.
It's done
in the NFL, which is America's game, which is the most popular sport in America, and their union is obviously much weaker than certainly than the NBA or the baseball unions, which have guaranteed contracts for the life of the contract. And I just don't know how much longer the NFL players are going to sit still for this kind of money. And like you say, when some bench player is making more than what the best players in the NFL are able to make.
Dan, that was one of the other things I was going to bring up. We are like right there on the same page, because I saw hundreds of different tweets that other NFL players had put out there about the unbelievability of these numbers and the inaccuracy or incompatibility between them. You're absolutely right. And I think that sooner rather than later, you got a strike looming, because I think that this is finally a new generation of, and enough of the old guard NFL players have retired and passed out of the league. The ones that were into that whole, the ones that worked for Mr. Modell and worked for, Mr. Brown and all of those guys have gone their way now. These are the modern players in full force. I think that the pushback is coming. The league makes more money than any of these other leagues do, and they're going, there is absolutely no way that this is going to happen. I think that the no guaranteed contracts is going to be a thing of the past. If I'm an NFL player, I'm looking at my union and going, how can the most dangerous sport there is with the lowest expected career rate be the only one that doesn't get guaranteed their money? And that's going to change, and I think this is going to make it change. I'm guessing you're going to start hearing major labor problems within a year, and they will strike over this. And that's what you do. If you're an NFL player, you just say, hey, You're not making $1 billion a year or a day or a month or whatever it is off of TV if we don't play the game. Call us when you want to pay us, and it won't take very long for that to get fixed.
I think you're right, and I think maybe if you can project it out on what the upshot of it will be, might just be because of the injury risk and because of those factors, you might see instead of 6-year non-guaranteed contracts, you might start seeing 3- and 4-year guaranteed contracts, which will make player movement, even greater than it is today with free agency and everything else. So I think it might, maybe in the long run, help the game because, or help provide, parity, balance, or whatever, which the NFL still probably already does better than other sports. Just because if they're guaranteed, the contracts would tend probably not to be as long.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I and every other person out there is always amazed at what the NFL gets away with compared to these other sports as far as not guaranteeing any of this money. I mean, the ones that get paid, don't get me wrong. It's not like some of these guys don't cash in, but most of them don't. And I'll tell you what, I was just watching again with my son a couple of weeks ago, Broke, one of those 30 for 30 specials on ESPN. Man, what was the thing? Within 3 years, most NFL players, the average NFL player has spent most of the money that they've made, and within 6 years, most of them are bankrupt or worse. The percentage was ridiculously staggering when you see the stat and you go, wow. Within 3 to 6 years, 75% of these guys are in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. And you're right, it does have to change. I've got maybe 5 more minutes here. I wanted to run one thing by you. And we were talking the other day about, and there are people been tweeting about it, and basically it all is a follow-on to Durant going to the Warriors and how.
And what do you think about that, by the way? What do you think of Durant going to the Warriors?
We got our ring, and go for it, man. I certainly have no problem with Durant doing what he did, wanting to grab the ring, wanting to win a championship, building a super team, and that certainly would appear to be what they've got out there now. But what the conversation was about was people saying, okay, why don't we just not play the season? Let's just ship the old Larry O'Brien trophy out to Oakland right now. In other words, what you and I were talking about last year, at the start of the season, before they played regular season game 1, we could sit here and we could say, okay, Cavs and Warriors.
Right.
It's going to be Cavs and Warriors. It's a shame we've got to go through this 82-game season and all these, couple dozen playoff games before we get to Cavs and Warriors. And really, it does seem like what the premise is, in any major professional sport, you can take 5 teams and you can say, these are the 5 teams that are going to be there at the end. And most of the time, you're going to be right. Well, I was disputing that. I was saying that is true in the NBA. I think it's undeniably true in the NBA. I think it's much less true in baseball. And I think it's a little bit less true in football. I don't know enough about hockey to know, but it seems like there's a lot more balance in hockey and you have surprise teams and teams that come up. But I don't think you can necessarily say, even in baseball, if when 10 teams make the playoffs, it would be hard at the beginning of the season to say, okay, these 5 are going to be there at the end. You might be able to say a couple of them. But in the last few years, that's been hard to do. How would you rank the major pro sports in terms of the predictability of a small number of teams being there at the end to fight it out in the finals?
Man, I'm with you on that. I mean, basketball's the worst because, seriously, if you told me at the start of the season to pick 6 teams to be there at the end, I'm going to get 3 or 4 of them every single time. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Same with football. See, I think football has more overall parity week to week. Any given Sunday, you never know who's going to win. But I do believe that before most seasons, because there's consistent franchises, most years it's easy to say the Patriots are going to be there when the dust settles, or, this team or that team, whatever it is. If it's the Broncos while they're doing their thing, you throw out, a couple of those, throw out a Patriots, a Steelers, and a Broncos. 2 of the 3 are probably going to be in the championship most years, at least recently. But overall, they have more parity. I'm with you on the baseball thing because it does seem that, we see plenty of big money teams that don't win. plenty of them in baseball. It's much harder to predict.
Right. I just think it probably goes basketball, football, baseball, and hockey probably in there, third or fourth in that grouping. But I think you're right. But I mean, even last year, no one was calling Carolina the Super Bowl.
No, for sure.
That
wasn't
a thing in the preseason.
There was a lot of people that they did finish hot when they went 8 straight to get into the playoffs the year before. So
yeah.
But
it's not
absolutely.
like they were a betting favorite or anything going into the season.
But I mean, I'll tell you what, in football, it's the top quarterbacks, and because they stay long term, that's where you look at last year. I mean, that's where everything kind of usually shakes out. You can kind of tell where them top guys are going. But
no doubt, yeah.
Hey, real quick,
if you don't have the great quarterback, you're just not even going to be there in the final 4 or 8.
Absolutely. Before you go, talking about who's floating out there, the other thing with the Durant, the counter move, Dwayne Wade. You see all the craziness going on, and I'm telling you, people out there that do this Twitter following thing and think it's something, Dan Gilbert knows exactly what he's doing. He sent a tweet to his social media guy that said, hey, go follow Dwayne Wade. And then the Indians did the same thing, and then the Akron Zoo. And by the time today's over, every civic organization in Cleveland will have followed Dwayne Wade on Twitter. But outside of the silliness, what are your thoughts realistically, unless something unprecedented happens with one of these guys taking a ridiculous pay cut that's never happened before? There's not a way possible that this even happens, right?
That's my understanding of it. That's what I hear, that he would have to, that Dwayne Wade would have to play for $3-point-something million instead of the 20 that he's looking for. And if we know anything about him and the superstar athlete and the ego and everything else, and we're not talking about a guy like Durant who's desperate to get some rings. He's got some rings.
But it's more than that, Dan. You said 20. He now has $50 million for 2 years on the table from the Denver Nuggets, and Chicago is about to make the same offer. But Denver already put it on the table, and Miami's offered 2 for 40. My biggest argument is I can't see the Union. I could see if it was even a $15 million pay cut, but I could not see the Union letting him leave $46 million on the table because it's just bad for all the other players.
Yeah, that's true. And there is, as much as some people want to deny it, there is in that sport and certainly in baseball, pressure from Union, the Brotherhood, and the management of the Union itself to take the big dollar and not leave dollars on the table for some selfish purpose like wanting to win championships.
That being said, the head of the Union is Chris Paul, and the vice president is LeBron James. So he does have some friends at the top of the Union. So we'll just throw that out there, too. But realistically, I mean, LeBron would have to play for the minimum. Dwayne Wade would have to play for $3.5 million, or the Cavs would have to gut their entire roster and probably trade Kevin Love to make it fit.
Yeah, not happening. Not happening. I'm not even hopeful that happens. In fact, I'm not even all that excited about the prospect of having Dwayne Wade here.
Right.
But, anyway,
what disappointed me, Dan, was Jamal Crawford. I was hoping that the Cavs could have snuck in there and signed him because I thought that he could have been like a J.R. Smith, but with a better dribble and better ability to drive to the hoop. Jamal Crawford's a good ball player, but the Clippers offered him like $43 million for 3 years. The Cavs, all of a sudden, their $3.4 million didn't look that good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ring or no ring, that'll show you.
Have to catch up to next week.
You got it.
But always fun. Thanks so much.
You got it, my man, Dan Wismar. You guys tweet with them at DWismar, DWISMAR. My phones are open one last time before we roll. 216-539-7535. Last chance to get in. 216-539-7535. And again, as I was saying, as Dan went off there, Crawford will show you. For people that talk about, it's easy for anybody at home, for you, for me, for anybody to go, oh, well, they'll give it up for the ring. They'll give it up because they want to win a championship. Jamal Crawford, he had a shot to come to Cleveland, and he could have taken that mid-level exception and came here, and the Clippers offered him 3 years for $43 million, and he had the choice. Do I bet on myself, as they say, and take that offer and go to Cleveland for $3.5 million, or do I go back here for $42 million? He chose $42 million over chasing a championship here in Cleveland. That's fine. But just think about that, because there was a bona fide opportunity. Now, that being said, he didn't exactly stay with a bum team. He stayed with the Clippers, who are one of the top teams in the Western Conference. But still, it's easy for any of us to sit there and say, oh, yeah, Dwayne Wade's going to come because LeBron's his friend. That's a heck of a friend. That's a hell of a friendship. You leave $47 million on the table. No, that's BFF for life. That's where, they might get each other's faces tattooed on each other at that point. And hey, more power to them. If it benefits the Cavs, go for it. But I'm thinking of all my friends, and there's friendship, and then there's a $47 million left on the table friendship. I'm looking at LeBron, if I'm Dwayne Wade, and going, hey, man, you're still going to be in Cleveland in 2 years, man. How about I'm going to go make this money real quick, and then I'll come check y'all out in 2 years. And then I'm going and getting my $50 million from Denver. Last caller on the phones. You're up on the Sports Fix.
J-Rocc, Daddy.
Hey, LGZ, what's happening, my man?
I got to tell you, there ain't nobody in their right mind that's going to let $47 million sit on a table.
I mean, hey, maybe they're going to do something crazy and say, hey, look, we're best friends. Hey, go for it. But I can't see it, brother.
Well, the Tigers just tied it up in the fourth with a Maben homer to left field. So
game tied at 2 in the fourth now, yeah.
Tomlin gave up the power hit. He was doing great up until now.
All right, LG. How you feeling about the stuff we've been talking about today?
Well, J-Rocc, Daddy, I got to tell you, man, I got Indians fever right now.
That's everybody should, baby.
It's amazing to me how well that the Cleveland Indians are playing, and the pitching staff. I mean, we got to give Mickey Callaway credit where credit's due, because if you think back a couple of seasons ago, J-Rocc, Daddy, when they first brought Mickey Callaway here, there was
Indians
guys like Carrasco. Excuse me. There was guys like Carlos Carrasco. People were begging the Indians to get rid of that guy, right?
Not anymore. And that was definitely one of his. That's going to go on the calling card there, is that he unlocked what everybody had wanted to see, and what that potential was there in a guy that really was on his last, I don't want to say, you're never on your last legs when you're that young of a guy, but he had been through some opportunities, and his next opportunity may have come somewhere else.
Look at these guys, though. Tomlin, Carrasco,
right.
Kluber, these guys, the pitching staff is doing a remarkable job. I know we're just coming up on the All-Star break, and I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, J-Rocc, because there's a whole lot of baseball left to be played. But if the Tribe can continue to play the way that they've been playing so far this season, I think we're in for an exciting fall, and it's been a long time. I'm not talking a wild card game either. I don't want to say too much, because we grew up and lived in Cleveland. It was darn good seeing a championship when the Cavs brought it home, baby, because I was only 4 years old when the Browns won in '64,
Absolutely.
But let me tell you, I agree. I got to go back to some of this NBA talk you were discussing with Dan. I agree with Dan. This is getting out of hand, man. I mean, the normal guy's not even going to be able to afford to attend an NBA game pretty soon. The money they're putting on the table, and like he said, mediocre talent, Deladova. Come on, are you kidding me? I love Mozgov, but God bless him. He somebody must love him a whole hell of a lot more than me to give him the kind of money he walked away from.
Well, in all reality, Mozgov's money isn't even that crazy when you look at it, especially when you realize that he's a 7-footer, and Mozgov can play some ball. Actually, his contract isn't one of the crazier ones to me. I mean, but it's all going to be out of whack. It is what it is. But what's going to be interesting is, as this big increase in salary takes the next 2 years to really kick in, that's where you'll see. It'll be next year and the year after where these ticket increases are. I asked a friend of mine. He's got pretty decent season tickets. He's got a three in a row there, and they're relatively close to the court, but they're far enough back that they're not obscenely priced. And I asked him what they were. I want to say they went up. They did go up. The overall package went up about $800 for the 3 seats this coming season. So you do the math. Each seat had an increase of a couple $100, and about $250, $275, something like that. Do 40 games. I mean, it's not awful, but there was an increase, and that was preceding this huge increase in things, and the Cavs about to get hit with the $54 million luxury tax bill that Dan Gilbert paid, which he had no problem writing that check, baby, because they brought him a championship. But it'll be interesting in the next 2 years to see how much NBA tickets across the board around the league jump up.
It's frightening, J-Rocc, what these guys are getting paid in let's be realistic about one thing. I know their bodies take a beating, and the hardwood court is very hard on people. But I got to tell you, man, for playing a game, the money that these guys are making, I mean, you go back to the early days of the NFL and stuff, even in the 70s when the cardiac kids were
I know where you're going.
Games.
I know where you're going, brother.
Some of these guys had a Terry Bradshaw, for God's sake, one of the best living legends, was selling cars during the offseason. J-Rocc, Daddy, just to make
I know times have changed for people that want to say, "Oh, well, we can't live in the past," and I agree with that point too.
Who's living in the past?
No. I'm with you, LG, and I love sports as much as you and everybody else. Our world has twisted something up though when these dollar amounts are being paid to people that are, in essence, playing a game for our televised entertainment, and the people that actually protect our lives, save our lives, fight for our lives, actually risk their lives every day, make peanuts compared to the guys we're watching on TV with our feet up on the couch while we're feeling safe because those guys are keeping us safe. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a very valid point you have there, J-Rocc, Daddy. And when you think about it for a second, the only sport, and I really appreciate the sport of golf, the PGA Tour, the Champions Tour, it's the only sport in the world that I know of, J-Rocc, Daddy, where if you don't go out there and perform to the best of your abilities, you don't make any money, man. You got to pay to get yourself to the tournament. You got to pay to put yourself up at the tournament. Sure, there's guys that made $40, $50 million playing golf. But if they weren't winning championships or they weren't finishing up in the money, and here's another fact with the PGA Tour player, J-Rocc, Daddy. If you don't finish on the 125 in the money list, you may lose your tour card and not even have a job next year.
Absolutely, yeah.
You got to work your butt off to stay with it. And I'm not saying that NBA players don't have to work their butts off, and I'm not saying NFL players don't have to work their butts off, but
hey, once that money's really guaranteed, that money's guaranteed, you know?
It's really getting out of hand, like Dan was saying, and it's going to be, like you were saying, if the NFL players decide that enough's enough and they don't want to play, look at the money from TV that they would lose if they did all walk out and go on strike. So you have a valid point there, too, but here's the question, J-Rocc, and you know, it's a hypothetical question. When is enough going to be enough? Because as the decades go by, and we see these humongous contracts that take place, and in just about every sport, okay, we're always flabbergasted, but it's when is enough going to be enough, J-Rocc, Daddy? When do you think we're going to see the end of it, man?
Oh, I'll tell you what. I think in a lot of ways, I feel like it reminds me of when the tech stock bubble reached the point where these, guys were making millions and billions of dollars without ever having an actual product. And eventually that thing had to bust. And I think that we may... I think realistically that
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, brother.
And basketball's going to reach a point where, like you said, it's too much and it's going to bust. And markets always correct themselves, like when the tech bubble crashed and then everything, people lost fortunes. And I think that may come at some point in time to roost too. That's why, in essence, the NBA locked the players out back in 99 or whatever to start that whole thing, because they needed to put some kind of clamps on the salaries. And here we've got a similar situation, and I think very quickly you're going to see a lot of problems, and it's going to come to a head. It'll correct itself one way or the other. And one of the ways it's going to hurt is the fans. Again, like we were saying, it's easy to understand why LeBron James makes $20 million. It's easy to understand why Kobe Bryant makes $25 million. It is not easy to understand why, Joe Blow, who gets in the game in the last quarter of a blowout, is making $9 million a year.
Well, even with a guy like LeBron James, J-Rocc Daddy,
it's still too much. Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, he's got more money than he knows what to do with, and a lot of that has endorsement deals attached to it. It's got the NBA basketball contracts attached to it. It's got his movie money attached to it. But what I want to tell you, we just saw him stand up and give a huge hunk of money up to sponsor kids to go to college, which is very admirable with a guy like LeBron James. You don't see everybody doing that sort of thing. That's number one. Number two, you're going to see this bubble pop pretty soon, J-Rocc Daddy, because if you look around and you look at some of the cable TV deals and the advertisement money that comes in, and I don't care if you got cable, Time Warner, whatever your cable carrier is, Dish TV, what's the other one with the dish? You know what I mean? Anyways, there's so many stations now that cover sports, ESPNs. What do they got, 7 ESPN? I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of TV stations. Fox Sports, you got this, you got that. The beer's going to be costing a fortune pretty soon. And when you start cutting it up people's beer budgets, I mean, come on, man. People are going to drop their cable TV, drop their satellite dish so they can afford to buy that 6-pack or 12-pack. The advertisement revenue is going to get affected sooner or later because it's, like you said, it's exactly like the tech bubble. I think you hit the nail right on the head. You got a product, you price it so high that you took it out of reach of the common man. And the common man are the people that are out there trying to support these things, J-Rocc Daddy. We all know, people like you and I who are in the industry, selling tickets is nice, but that's not how you make the money to pay these players, whether it's NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. You don't make all your money on ticket revenue, man. It's all this TV money, and it's going to get so far out of hand. And like I said, they're already... These networks negotiate with the cable carriers. The Dish TV carrier wants to drop this channel because these people are making ludicrous demands on more money. And how can they not, J-Rocc, if this is what they got to pay out to have the advertisement dollar go to the athletes? You follow me?
Absolutely, my friend. Speaking of the athletes and their money, as we wrap it up, LG, Dwayne Wade's official offer that he got from Denver, $52 million over 2 years. He is apparently still bucking for a third guarantee year, and Chicago is willing to partially guarantee that third year. Again, anybody that thinks that he wants 3 guaranteed years of money. He is not coming to help his boy LeBron for $3.48 million, man. Anyways, LG,
there's no way. There's no way anybody in their right mind, J-Rocc Daddy, is going to give up that kind of money to come help their guy, LeBron James, who, by the way, if you want my opinion, probably doesn't even need Dwayne Wade's help. We got.
And I'll tell you what, man. I mean, it's a buddy of mine was joking, said, "Hey, man, maybe LeBron will cut his boy a check under the table. Go, hey, I got your money, Dwayne. Don't worry about it. I'll give you 10% of my beat stock. I've got you. Don't worry about it. So who knows? LGZ, my friend. I got to wrap it up. Anything else?
Well, J-Rocc Daddy, I just. Like I said, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that these Cleveland Indians. And you know what? We got to think about this. Michael Brantley should be back after the All-Star game.
Absolutely, brother.
Dr. Smoot back in the lineup. We may be beating up on people a little more easily when he comes back in. But I just keep my fingers crossed that the Cleveland Indians can continue to play the kind of baseball we've been seeing them play. This Lindor is unbelievable. He's a freak of nature's, J-Rocc Daddy. He's one talented kid, isn't he, man?
He is a natural if there ever was one, bro.
You know, I always loved Omar Vizquel. Defensively, I think Lindor's right there with him, but from both sides of the plate, he shows a lot more power than Omar did it with the bat in his hand. But I got to tell you, talented defensively, offensively, the kid's talented.
Hey, Omar could hit too. Omar could hit too. People under
sure he could hit.
He
could hit. He was pretty consistent, but I just think, you know, and you know what, J-Rocc Daddy, maybe we're just a little excited because, and God forbid Lindor ever goes into a slump. It happens to a lot of people, but we haven't seen him go into a slump offensively. So maybe I'm just a little over zealous because I'm really liking what I'm seeing from that kid. But the Browns are really going to have a hard path to follow, J-Rocc Daddy.
You got that right. Following the Cavs and then following the Indians summer. Good luck with that one, Hugh Jackson. Good luck. All right, LGZ.
I don't know what's going to happen, man. If people are thinking, okay, here we go. But, you know, hey, who knows what could happen. They brought in some old favorites with Ernest Biner in the mini camps. They brought in Bernie Kosar the first time he's been
Well, they can't play the games, though. That's the only problem.
So. Oh, they can't play the game, but they can really stress what it used to be like when you win a game here in Cleveland.
All they got to do is look around at the other teams, and they can see what it's like when you win. They don't have to think about what it was like 20 years ago. It could be that way now. Just go win some games. Larry, you have a great one, my friend.
The Tigers pulled out ahead now, J-Rocc, 3-2, so... the Tribe's got a little bit of work to do here, buddy. All right, brother, you have a great day, great show. I'll talk to you soon. In the meantime, go Tribe, baby.
Hell yeah, my man. And the Indians looking to climb their way back up. Finish this one off with the Tigers, some matinee baseball. You guys, by the way, long week coming up here. Hopefully you enjoy it. There's a lot of baseball to be played. The Yankees in town. Standing room only tickets for sale, $19. You can get in the SRO section while they last. The Jake, as it used to be, as I still call it, will be packed this weekend. Progressive Field will be rocking. Get yourselves down there. I will be in Erie, Pennsylvania, Saturday night for Pro Wrestling Rampage. Those of you listening on WFSN in the Erie, Union City area, come on down to the Saga Club and check out a great night of PWR wrestling action. And you can check me out on my Facebook and Twitter and follow all of that at J-Rocc Daddy on Twitter, at J-Rocc Daddy on Instagram, Jerry Myers on Facebook. And as well, you guys, I want to hear from you about everything we talked about here as free agency rolls on in the NBA, as the Indians keep it rolling. Hit us up, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Twitter at The Sports Fix CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com, and you can call and leave your take anytime this week, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. I've got a big weekend coming up. Hopefully, I've got some great things to tell you guys about next week when we rejoin you next Wednesday. Hump Day, Sports Fix. Dan Wismar will be back with me, and we're going to do the thing. We'll see you live. Same bat time, same bat channel. Next week, here on the Sports Fix. Until then, have a great weekend. Go Tribe. Go Cleveland. Enjoy it wherever you're at. And we love you, Cleveland and beyond. We'll see you next week, Daddy, right here on the Sports Fix.